Well, good morning, everyone. It's a thrill and an honor to be here with these superstar design siblings. Frank and Doreen Gehry have spent a lifetime believing deeply in the power of education to change lives. And Frank also believes buildings can change lives, but we'll get to that a little later. They share an obsession with good design and the joy of learning, something they worry has been replaced these days in education, as I'm sure some of you might be feeling these days. They also believe in taking risks and taking chances, and they love to challenge authority. They would have made good reporters. And we're going to talk about that a bit today. First, a brief introduction. My name is Liz Willen, pronounced Willen, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Hechinger Report. We are a nonprofit journalism site based at Teachers College, Columbia University. We have a number of newsletters, which I hope you sign up for, and you can read our stories all over the country in places from the Los Angeles Times to the Washington Post to NBC News and also USA Today, just to name a few. And I am honored to be sitting next to Frank Gehry. He has built an architectural career that has spanned over 6 decades and produced public and private buildings in America, Europe, and Asia. His work has earned Mr. Gehry several of the most significant awards in the architectural field, including the Pritzker Prize. If you have never seen a Frank Gehry building, go in, walk around, spend some time in them. I did that in LA recently. I walked around your concert hall, and there were a lot of tourists, the Disney Concert Hall, and it's just an incredible structure. It's like nothing you have ever seen. And this is his kid sister, Doreen. She's an award-winning 50-year veteran educator and a published author in the field of education. She taught all grades in public schools for 15 years. And then she began developing her design-based learning methodology. She used to call it city building education in the late 1960s. She really wanted to ignite creativity and critical thinking among students in grades K to 12. She recently published a book that I read and really enjoyed, and she'll be signing here. And also, after this, there's going to be a workshop with teachers who are actually doing the kind of work she talks about in her book. Today, you can be signing her new book at 11:30 today, room 100 at the Convention Center. There's also going to be a really fun hands-on workshop that I'm so excited to, and that's going to be at the Austin Convention Center. That's going to be at Salon E at the Hilton tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30 tomorrow. And we're going to be talking a lot about building cities and what's that all about, and you're going to see it and touch it. And I'm going to start by briefly asking both of you, what is the biggest roadblock you have encountered to doing what you want to do? Frank, I would say for architecture, and Doreen in education. Who would like to tackle that first?
Are there any teachers out here? So these people know what the challenges are. First of all, nobody thinks they're wonderful. Nobody thinks they're important. Our culture is so screwed up that it doesn't give teachers their due. They are the warriors, the true warriors of our society. You are the people. You're everything. You are everything that this society needs. And we stopped teaching civics education in 1959, and these teachers out here are trying to live through this pandemic where kids are coming back and people are telling you what to do. People high up in offices are telling teachers how to behave with children. They know better. Teachers are so special and creative. You have to be. You can't face a group of kids year after year after year without thinking about what you're going to do with them and how you're going to make it better.
And yet there are so many obstacles that teachers face, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later when we look inside some of the classroom and building you've done. Frank, you can't build buildings like yours without facing lots of obstacles. Tell us about some of the ways you overcame them. And you can choose whichever building or design you want to.
Well, first of all, if you think different, I guess I do, maybe. I, they say I do, but I think all of us think different than each other because we each have our own signature, which is clear. When I have a students, I ask them to write their names, and then we look at all of them, and they're all different. And I say, well, you got to stay with that difference, and it's in age, it's in your body. You can't. So to try to be like somebody else is not really going to get anywhere. Having said that, not everybody's ready for that. So you got to weather the storms of acceptance. And it takes a long time. I just, when I look back, it was a struggle, but I was having fun while I was doing it. I did a few buildings that I'm very proud of. And so I guess that's the way it is.
Well, you both challenge authority. Doreen once told me you're both like a dog after a bone, and in different ways to get what it is you want to do, and in education. And I'm going to show you guys behind you. There's some images of work that you've done together. It was captured in a film in 1972 that I saw. It was recently restored, called Kid City, and you were working together to help children build a city using Doreen's signature design-based learning methods. And there you were in the classroom. The kids were electing a mayor. You were building all kinds of things. And what was the idea behind that, Doreen? And how did you rope Frank into building cities with kids with you?
I roped him into being here.
Thank you, Frank.
He loves me, so he comes along for the ride. I was in a classroom in 1969, and I think there may be one of my students, Porcha Sotz Grimes. Are you out there, Porcha? If you're there, raise your hand. Are you there? Porcha? Are you there? Woo!
Yay, Portia!
Porcha was a kid in my class in 1969, and Charles Eames was across the street from us. We had built a city in the classroom, and he organized funding so that I could start training other teachers to do what I was doing. They didn't like it, the other teachers.
Why not, Doreen?
Well, part of it was my fault, I think. I was so scared when I first started, and I was afraid of teachers. I was afraid you wouldn't like it, and I was afraid, it was going to be too much for them. But I was wrong. It's not too much for them. And we got funding from the National Endowment for the Arts for what they called an Architect in School program. And I had to hire a group of architecture students to work in classrooms. I don't do that anymore because the teachers are creative enough that we don't need the support from architects any longer. But in those days, I didn't know, how to navigate. Frank was one of the architects in residence, and it was so crummy because the LA Unified School District wouldn't pay him because we were siblings.
They thought it was nepotism?
Nepotism.
You're a Nepo baby?
We were Nepo. And
I went along with it.
he did it. He did it anyway.
I hope you got community service credit or something. So what were you trying to do there? Because in a few minutes, we're going to show a little clip about what happened from the film. But what were you trying to do with this design-based city building? Frank, what was your sister trying to do?
So we all live in a city, or more or less, right? And so people relate to it, and they know that the city has roads, and it has schools, and it has parks, supposedly, and things. So you can engage in a conversation and ask young fourth graders or fifth graders, or how old? Yeah, to make a list of the important things that a city should have. And they all talk, number one is always trees. And they have a whole list of nice things that they want the city to have. And then we give them the assignment to build a city. And the land that we give them is a piece of wood, and on it there are a lot of trees. We tell them this is a 2-hour class, but it's 2 years. So if you take a tree out, you can't put it back.
Oh, wow.
And then they're asked to design city hall, school, all kind. We give them a whole bunch of stuff, and they go about and they make all the stuff, and they put the trees in the box. So when it's done, we said, "What happened to the trees?"
Are they having a good time doing this?
Well, they understand that to build buildings, some people take the trees out. That's why.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of
We're going to show a short clip of what it was you were trying to do, but can you paint a quick picture before we show the clip of you building cities with kids? What were you hoping to accomplish? Why a city? Why not a farm?
When I first started, I thought it would only be for primary grades. But now I have science teachers. The workshop that we're doing tomorrow will be led by a high school science teacher. The city is, what Frank's saying is true. The city is it's like an entry, and you can do it over and over again. I mean, we go and visit cities. What I was trying to do, and what he was trying to do, is to elicit self-expression, to get students to have their own voice, instead of copying Picasso painting. You go to art classes, and they show you a painting, and then they tell you you're supposed to copy it. We didn't want that. We wanted the kids, their Picassos.
Well, they live in a city, so they know what you're talking about.
Right.
So you don't have to explain it. I don't know if you talked about a farm, they wouldn't all have been on a farm. So
Right.
I think it's the most communal thing to talk about.
And also building a city, as you've explained, you're learning more than just about building, right? There's a whole civics aspect built into this.
And when you finish building the city, that's when the important part comes in my teaching. That's when you can start to look at the tree problem. You can start to look at what else is going on in the city.
Well, they make a list when they start of the things that are important to them. So then at the end, you go say, "Have you accomplished that?"
Do you tell them what's important, or do you let them
No,
figure
they
it out?
decide what's important, but usually they haven't accomplished it because the pressure to build the city, which is like the real pressure in the world to build a city, is sometimes ignores those human pieces of it.
Yeah, the human elements,
That
right.
we would like it to be. It isn't, because you got traffic, you got all these, what do you call it, smoke from the industry.
Environmental problems.
Yeah. So,
Yes, and here in Austin, you have lots of traffic, you might have noticed.
So we all live with that, and so the kids know that. Mm-hmm. They've heard it, they understand.
But Frank is if you go to his office and you see how he works, he doesn't start out with the end product. He starts out with an idea. And that's what we're doing. The kids are starting with an idea. They don't have to refine it. They're not city planners. They're not architects. They're kids. They're students. They're high school students. They're elementary school students. But to start out the way Frank starts out, that you start with an idea, that I, as a human being, have an idea. Gee, what a concept.
Well, let's take a look at that clip now and watch these kids in action as they try to build a city and get some direction from you and Frank. Can we put up that little clip now? Here we go.
Now, Danny, not just cars, but what? What's it going to be called? The main heading that we're going to talk about.
Monorails?
No, but what are you going to need to move the people around?
What's transportation.
Good. You're going to need some kind of...
Transportation. girls keeping emotions.
Now you see, here's a good idea, because you can see here that you need transportation, but you can see over here that you don't want cars and trucks and buses and airplanes. So since you're future people today, you will invent a new transportation system.
Like electric cars.
Whatever you decide on, whatever you want.
You're going to need housing very soon.
We didn't cars.
Transportation? What kind of transportation are you going to have? Did you tell us?
No, a train going all through the city. I mean, a subway.
Oh, that's not bad. See if they'll agree with you.
So, you know, I the wrong idea. I don't make
I just got a telephone call that there's a lady who's going to have a baby that's coming in on the airplane.
Right over here.
Oh, great.
Hold it. At a hospital for the lady who's going to have a baby.
Do we have an ambulance?
No, we don't have an ambulance, and the lady lives over there, and the hospital's over there. How are we going to get the lady who's going to have a baby from the house to the hospital? Where's our transportation
There's no
people?
roads.
There are no roads.
a bridge.
But we got no roads. There's no way to get her there.
Maybe they want to do it in a hurry because you use a different kind of transportation.
Sure.
If you want to get it there in a hurry, what kind of transportation don't even do you?
We need roads.
You want to get the lady
Who's in charge of transportation?
Oh, no.
Big highway.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I'm sorry, we just have no way to get the people in, have to put a big highway down.
You gotta remove all the trees.
Gotta take the trees off.
No, put them like that.
Tell me about this. What's this?
We gotta let it dry first.
Oh, that's fine. You need it right away.
This up here. Like if we wanted to put a skirt, like a park is over there.
That's pretty nice.
It won't stand up.
Can you put it this way to take up less space? Maybe save some trees?
Okay, we're about finished, you guys. Okay, come on, we're just finishing up. Okay, what about the traffic? We said we didn't want to have cars, trucks, too many roads.
Yeah. What fun.
You were pretty cute.
It's inevitable, right?
The kids were having the best time. And you guys look like you were having a really good time, too.
Well, I think at the end of it, they kind of get a sense of what's really going on around them.
The teacher wasn't having a good time.
No, we're gonna get to that, Doreen. But I could see what you were trying to do. For example, those students were engaged. They were learning. They had real life obstacles and real life problems. You didn't solve those problems for them, did you?
No, but they each made a thing that they could point to and say, I did that too. There's that part of it.
So to you, that's such an important part of education and of building, right? It's that creativity, that individual thinking that's being encouraged, that you're encouraging through this.
So it's not separate from learning stuff that teachers need to teach. It's not, you don't do this and then you forget about reading, writing, arithmetic, the times tables, the periodic table. This stuff is all intertwined. John Dewey talked about a holistic kind of education.
The joy.
And having fun in the classroom and doing purposeful learning. These kids and the students that we work with now all over the place. We have a program in Japan, and these kids are just jumping for joy. You know, they're engaged, but they also are learning facts. They when they finish with this, what Frank is talking about, they analyze it. They talk about what went right, what went wrong. How can we think about this? And that's where the expertise of the teachers comes in, because they're required to teach lessons anyway. It's a matter of how you deliver those lessons,
right?
How you engage the students so that they want to learn those lessons that I have to teach anyway.
So at this point, you both thought it was going pretty well, right? You were spending your time with kids and they were building and you were helping your sister and you were doing great things in a public school classroom. to really understand what went wrong next, we're going to show another little clip that talks about how the teacher felt about it. The teachers, you feel so good about teachers, you love teachers, but in this case, she may not have felt so great about you guys. Can we see that clip? Can we go back to that?
We've had effective people in here. There are times when you have had excellent rapport. I don't know what's happened, but
as far as I'm concerned, you absolutely kill any kind of creativity. I come in with...
Are you speaking to me personally, Mr.
Yes, I'm
Gehry?
speaking to you personally.
I see. Well,
And I think that you create a tension in the kids that makes it impossible to get to them. The mayor of the town came to me the other day and said that the circle building was my idea.
Right.
And therefore...
That's right.
And who told them that?
They told me, and the flower building also. They had built flower buildings, but they
said...
said...
to you what I was trying to do.
Imposing ideas upon
I
children rather
wasn't
than their own
imposing ideas.
creativity.
I'm an architect, and I have solutions to the thing.
You have better ideas, I believe you said.
No,
True,
I'm
I would hope you could
explaining to them.
help children to do this. It's happened over and over, trying to rig my election. Within the kids, they came up with beautiful choices. Why do these kinds of things? Why impose ideas? The eraser suggestion Ananda made, I want to make a eraser monument to pollution, which Doreen took and threw in the wastebasket. And Ananda would not participate. Right. She told me about it. And you wonder why she's still getting in there. She's a very bright kid and someone who will care. And she said, that's why I wouldn't make a monument. I hope you're not mad at me.
You know, you're lying.
I'm sorry. This is
I
real
have
bad.
never taken any child's work and thrown it in the
I
wastebasket,
see.
so just
And you
stop
haven't been
that.
threatened with lawsuits
Don't
previously
stop
either
that.
in this same school?
Just stop it.
Sorry.
Cool it. Just stop it, because it's
I want
a
it
crock of
cool. I
baloney.
want it over.
Fine, it's over. We'll not poach on your
And
territory
the
any
dog is
longer.
Wow, that's a moment.
I didn't want to relive that.
I didn't like it the first time.
I think she probably came around later, that teacher.
No.
No?
See, the thing is, I mean, Portia's in the audience that she remembers. We were at Westminster School, and that teacher was right down the hall from where I had built the first city that Portia was in that classroom. And I figured she knew what we were doing. She was my friend. She had come in there. I had talked to her.
Go.
You know, blah, blah.
Well, the main thing is, let's talk about resilience, because you were kicked out, right? You left. Either way, you were kind of sacked, let's face it. She fired you, right?
It wasn't
what
the first
they're not
time.
showing you is she then got a friend of mine who was industrial design head at USC to take over the class. And then what they produced for the rest of the class was pretty bizarre but nothing.
Nothing.
It was really, it shows you the kind of level of this or that, which didn't make sense. So I just think it was misunderstandings.
Well, great thinkers.
Territorial
Yeah.
kind of thing. That she had her rights, and I salute her.
She didn't salute you. But since that time, luckily, lots of others have. So I wanted to talk a little bit about resilience, because it seems to me that the great thinkers in both education and in architecture and in all creative fields have run up against teachers like that or obstacles like that. And you went on after that, and you became more determined to continue your city building methods. You didn't say, fine, it's not going to work. And in fact, later on, you got better receptions, and let's hear about that.
We got to talk about our mama and papa. Because I think that's, you know.
They taught you that resilience?
I don't know. We grew up in a family where you just had to keep on. You talk a little bit about it, Frank.
Well, they were very poor, so there weren't many choices. But
yeah, I mean, we had a father who was unable to work, but was a creative soul, and it was hard. It was a hard family growing up in.
anyway, I run into that kind of thing with my architecture over the years, where the presumption is that I'm not going to be paying attention to the most important things of a building, that I have a personal agenda that has nothing to do with the people. And so it gets a lot of blowback. I think I had to live through a lot of that kind of stuff. But actually, in the end, you prevail if you keep going, and the buildings get built, and the people that were pushing me around got beat up more than I did.
And you've walked away from projects when you didn't have control.
But we always delivered on time, on budget, and all that stuff, which an article just came out that talks about that in for my work. That's not how it's perceived in the front end. So,
Yeah.
We are educators.
I think a lot of things are edited out of possibilities that might be good for growth, are edited out based on it's got to be like this. This is the way it is.
Right, and if the next Frank Gehry was sitting in that classroom, Doreen, they would have been very discouraged because you guys packed up and left, and all the things that they were trying to do were gone, right?
Yeah, it's too bad they didn't show you
the ending part.
The end.
I think what Frank and I have in common is this persistence, and he's a hell of a teacher, and I am too, or I was when I was in the classroom. He did a building, a little tiny building for a marine biology place in Los Angeles, and there was a lot of chain link in it, and nobody liked chain link because he was using chain link, and they thought it was, terrible. It was terrible material. And one day he said to me, I'm going down there for, they're giving a party or something for me for the opening. And I went with him, and these were the docents. It was the docents were giving him a party. And they loved him, and they loved the chain link. And I said, how did that happen? How did it happen that you talked them into this? And he said, no, I didn't. He said, I made in the contract, the primary person had to bring a docent to my office every time they came, so these docents got educated. They understood what he was trying to do. That's the same problem I've had with teachers. The problem has been getting them to understand what you're trying to do so that they don't think you're like some rock star or somebody that's wanting to be famous and do something goofy and crazy. If you can educate the teachers, they understand. If you can educate the client, usually they understand. But that's the part that you're the dog with the bone with.
But it's a tougher environment right now, post-pandemic. There's
so
much emphasis on catching students up and on learning loss, and teachers are enormous turnover. They're leaving the profession. They don't feel empowered and creative in many ways. They feel rather beaten down from our reporting at the Heckenscher Report and from many conversations I've had.
And the teachers are told like they have to be online and they have to have breakout rooms, and no one says to the teachers like, what do you do online and what do you do in breakout rooms? They give them the dictation from up high about how you're supposed to do that. We have teachers that are building a city in the classroom. And when they went online and when they went into the breakout rooms, the kids were a mayor or they were a city council member, and they went into the breakout room to figure out what kind of energy the city was going to have. And those kids were on task. They were reading energy information. I went into one of the breakout rooms and the kids said, we're arguing, this fourth grade, we're arguing over geothermal energy. And I said, really, what's that? And the kid, they're arguing about it in the fourth grade, about whether they're going to have geothermal energy in their city. Mm-hmm. If you have a tool, and I think the city is some kind of a tool that you can play on, you have this game board, you can go lots of different places. And Frank does that in his work too.
We had a class with students at the Smithsonian, and one of the kids was the son of the great
Wernher von Braun.
Wernher von Braun. And so he didn't take any of the trees out. He built the city floating above all the trees.
Wow. He was able to think creatively
Yeah.
and on his feet.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, is just to get that understanding that you have the power to do things.
But this is a much more challenging environment for that, for teachers.
It is for them.
So what do? We can't give up.
No, Doreen said you should just close the door and tell them to do it anyway, but.
That's right. No, I had a lot of administrators, Liz, that this one administrator in Pasadena, I couldn't believe it. We were in a classroom. The kids were beyond involved, and they left to go home, and the administrator, she was, a big deal from the district office. And we're sitting there talking. She said, "Oh, this is wonderful," and the kids are so engaged. And she said, "Could you figure out how to do this without having them build the city?"
Well, that's hard, and that's the thing. You've been trying to get more. Right now, California is the only district using this method, correct? I know you said it's been done in Japan.
In Japan.
Is it because so much of professional development funds now, which is really teacher training funds, are used to catch kids up or for tutoring? Why don't we have more classrooms doing what you and Frank were doing?
There's tons of money in professional development. You teachers know that out there. They drag them from one professional development to another. I call them polka dot training. You go there and they give you a kit and they give you books and you come back and you do whatever it is they taught you to do. That is bullshit, excuse me. The teachers need a methodology. They don't need polka dots. They need a way to engage the kids to start with. Then they can use the polka dots. I'm not saying that the trainings are bad and they should avoid them, but there has not been, the real culprit here is the universities. The universities have not done decent teacher training in years and years and years and years. Yes, you know that.
It seems to me there are people who agree with that here.
Well, and if you walk down the hall at major universities, you'll see a professor standing there lecturing to a hall that looks like this about how to be in the classroom. That doesn't work. If you come to our workshop, if you come to the workshop tomorrow, you'll see how we do our training.
So the idea of students sitting in rows and the teacher lecturing up front seems to you both pretty archaic.
Yeah. You're just giving kids and people the right to express themselves, that they have something to say, and that can start early, and that builds a kind of a confidence, and the teachers can enable that and support it. I think that's the issue. It's not asking them to be like. I don't want them to be like me. They have to be like themselves.
That's a great point. And what did either of you in your own education have the kind of teachers who told you to push the envelope the way you both are? In your more traditional experience being educated in Toronto?
Well, I ran into a lot of anti-Semitism, so my teachers, a lot of them had that kind of thing going for them, but which made it difficult. I had a great time with physics and math and stuff like that with those teachers, but when it came to literature and politics, whatever, it was sort of not clean.
Would you say uninspiring?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on. You just open the door for kids to grow your children. I have 2 grandchildren. The parents are great, giving them opportunities. The little one is 5 years old. She knows more about stuff than I do. I mean, really, I can't believe it. So I think it's exposing to what's going on, and
When we grew up in Canada, though, the desks were actually bolted to the floor. You didn't move. You sat there, and the teacher was in the front. My big aha moment was in I think the 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade. We were studying China, and a teacher brought a teapot and made tea in front of the class and served it. And I just thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world. And then we went back to sitting in our straight rows.
well, it ain't like that anymore. There's other issues now, I guess.
Yeah.
So learning by doing is really a theme for both of you.
Well, but just trying to get people to understand they're an individual. They're, in a lot of ways, they're different. Not that that they have, their expression is different. It's just, it is. And everybody has a signature. And so if you keep pursuing that, I think that opens the door to a lot of.
Seems like you have both talked a lot about reclaiming humanity, both through education and through your buildings. How does one do that through your buildings, Frank?
Well, I mean, when I design a concert hall, I think of the people in the audience and the people in the orchestra. And I feel like you have to make a connection. You have to make a building. Like this room is difficult. There's a separation between us and them. With all the lights and everything, maybe it's inevitable, but it could be done in a way that we would feel more together. That we
Okay, so we're going to redesign this right now.
And so, well, but I did that in the concert hall in LA, and people come up to me and talk about it, and the orchestra talks about it, and the audience talks about it. So it does work. I didn't have to write it out. They got it.
But you sure had to convince some people, right? Not everybody would look at that design and say, sure, do it.
Yeah, well, that was different. That's the whole difference.
What about for you, Doreen? You talk a lot about how you want to bring back more humanity and creativity in classrooms. What for you could really make that happen?
I heard the Secretary of Education speak. He did a keynote last year, and I was listening to it before I did this. And he said, we teach kids, not curriculum. And I think that that's the point. I think you have to understand that they're human beings. And our culture, the parents in our culture, starting with the parents, they have weird expectations about what it is that this person called teacher is supposed to do with and for their kid. And these teachers will tell you the parents are very demanding, and they're not knowledgeable. So we need a culture that educates in other words, you've got a system where you've got people that have gone through school and they think school's supposed to be like that. And school isn't supposed to be like that. So it's not the parents' fault. They think it's supposed to be like it was supposed to be. It's the same problem Frank has. They think the building's supposed to be a square building. The thing I love about Frank's buildings is that his buildings look like they can get up and walk away. They don't look like a heavy meal. Okay. I like teachers to feel Like they can get up and walk away. And
There's a question.
Yes, we've got a bunch of questions.
Can we schedule creativity? Somebody's asking. I don't think you can, but I think you can. I think you can support curiosity. I think that's the most important thing. We have our individual ways of doing things. Like I prove, when you write your signature, the aesthetic of the lines are different than your neighbor's aesthetic of lines. So there's something in our being and our physicality that is different, that makes that, and that's if you stick with that idea, and if you sponsor curiosity, those are the two things that is respect individuality and sponsor curiosity.
That's great. And there, because everybody's sort of got engrossed in your story early on from the classroom, there's been a request to bring Porcha out. And I don't want to put too much pressure on her, but if you'd like to come and talk about your memories of that on stage, Porcha, I don't know if that's possible.
Will you come up? Woo! Get up here, Porcha. I haven't seen her in 50 years.
Aww.
50 years. Do we have a chair for her?
No, but I'll hand Porcha a mic if I can.
And I was gonna cry. I said I was gonna cry. I said I was gonna cry. So there's a picture of her. I don't know where that is. There's a picture of the first city. Can we get that up?
Yeah, a picture of Porcha as a young child.
There's a picture of her.
Thank you.
There's a picture of her scratching her head.
There she is. Wait, back with the glasses, right?
And Porcha
there you are.
was a wonderful student who...
She's still the same. If she says come up, I come up.
She told me she wouldn't do this under any circumstances.
I'm sorry, Porcha.
No.
But since you're here, what did it feel like to have the Gearys kicked out when you were having so much fun in that project?
Well, we were, I think, the first class. And what I wanted to say, I know...
Here's Porcha. You see
that's me in the middle.
You see the kid with her hand on her head?
Wow. Now you're telling my age. That's over 50 years ago.
Well, how about mine?
Yes. But what I wanted to say is, it may just sound like city building, building a city. But what it does for a student, like they're emphasizing, is the creativity. You have an idea, what do you want to do with that idea? And with here, we had to first plan it, we had to put it to scale, we had to work with each other, because if I wanted my building higher than yours, it's blocking your view. And so what do? And we had to work together to figure it out. I wanted to be mayor. And somebody else wanted to be mayor. I had to study what it is to be a mayor. I think we even had to write a letter to the mayor at that time. So that's how you incorporate the actual learning of civic duties or whatever. Like Frank was saying, if we wanted transportation, how are you going to do that to get all the way around the city? Your transportation cannot run into my area. And so we're learning space with people and individual, learning how to get along, how to work together. And so when you have that, then you can incorporate that into the, the writing, math, and arithmetic, or the social studies, or the science. Great. It all...
I didn't even tell her this.
It all incorporates that without really the kids knowing, without us knowing. We thought we were just having fun, working out, building our town, building our city, coming up with ideas. Okay, when you feel like that as a student, now then you all bring in, you got to do this science paper, or you have to do this project, that relates to what you have to teach us. We're feeling good because we've expressed that in this. And so when we translate that over to the stuff that's required, it's no big deal.
So should Porcha be mayor?
Yes!
And I just wanted to say how I got into Doreen's class. I was that student always running her mouth. And my mother used to say, don't be the only one talking in the room. And so I was sent out to the hallway. I had another instructor. And he would make me stand in the hallway because I would talk and just kind of disrupt the class. And so Doreen saw me. She said, why are you always in the hallway? And I said, talking.
I'm in trouble.
So she said, I think you need to be in my class. So the following year, my 5th grade year, I was in her class, and this is when we started what we now know as, city building or design-based learning. And so as I was sitting there listening, I'm still talking, I just wanted you as educators to understand that it's more to building like a city and planning and learning and construction and all that. It is the concept of they are learning more things, life things, that they translate over to what you're required to teach them. As I know in Texas, you got all these required tests and all these different things that you have to do. But when a child or a student feels good about themselves or feel good about what they're doing, then they will translate that over. They will take it home and explain it to their parents, what they're doing, what they learned today, what they have to do. And then they feel better to me about doing the required stuff.
Thank you so much, Portia, for that great insight. Thank you, and thank you for coming up on stage and remembering.
Portia,
Thank you.
I haven't seen her in 50 years, and I've only spoken to her a little bit on the phone.
This was an unplanned moment.
I want to know. I want to know what happened with your life, because she did this have an impact on your life in terms of your career? Did you imagine that you would have a career when you were a child?
It had a very, very, very strong impact, because back then, I don't know if they still do now, but we went on field trips. Doreen took us to the Philharmonic Orchestra. We went and saw the Nutcracker. So it exposed kids in this city to all these things that their parents probably wouldn't have taken them to. And so all that was incorporated. We went and visited Frank. He was just, I can call him Frank now. He was just starting out, and we learned things from him. And she had all kind of speakers come to the class. The conductor of the Philharmonic Orchestra come. These are things that you're exposing kids to that stay with them. I tell my granddaughter all the time, I said, I went to the Nutcracker and all of that, and that was a big deal for a child back then at that time.
What happened with your career, though?
With my life then, I ended up marrying a Marine. He was from Texas, and that's how, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I could. So he brought me, we came to Texas, and I went to nursing school. I had
hey, Portia.
stair-step children, so I have a 43, 42, 38-year-old. And went to nursing school.
Are you the only one in your family that went to college?
No, I had a brother that went, and the other two did not. They just, work. They have jobs and work. And I became a registered nurse. And
Portia, thank you so much for this. No, it's just that I want to bring it back to the Gearys, and I think what I'm hearing from you, and it's so glad that you're here, the power of teachers to change lives.
Absolutely.
The power of teachers to change lives.
If you can, in your children. I know that's a lot to ask nowadays, but if you can in any kind of way, take an interest or a specific personal interest in your children, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have a question both for Frank and Doreen about what you do, what happens when you build these cities, and it kind of goes to your point about what you remember when you're doing that kind of hands-on learning. Do you contextualize for the students the shared responsibility we all have towards the care and sustainability and development, and the equitable development of our cities?
I think that you saw that in the way they talk to each other, that they become aware that it's a joint effort, that it's not themselves. I think that's what the city building program does engender. So
she wanted to be mayor. I mean, look.
I'm so sorry.
I didn't tell her to be mayor. She wanted to be mayor. This was a kid that was mouthing off in her classroom. And her teacher was having trouble. He was sending her out into the hall.
She's mayor now.
Frank just made her the mayor.
But you
Get the word mayor.
You've got an opportunity to teach civics through the city. And how did she even know what a mayor was? They had a building inspector. We pretended that was a government for the city. So you build the city and you run the city. And that's why she wanted to be, I changed mayors so that several different kids could have the chance.
Did you end up having any chance to become the mayor for a little bit of time?
She was the mayor.
For a while, right. And that's an experience you'll never forget.
And it was really wild, because what Porcha didn't tell you is that when she came into my class, and she reminded me of this, I made her sign a contract that she could use her speaking, her strong speaking, in any way she wanted to about the city, but she couldn't talk back to me and she couldn't talk back to the kids. And she said I gave her 3 chances, and she became the mayor. And I think that the important part here is that you face children and you don't know who they are. And you don't know, just like Frank and I have our backgrounds, you have your background, she has her background, we have a home with a mother, maybe a father. Stuff is happening to these kids that we maybe don't know. And yet you can bring them into this kind of neutral environment of the city, a place where they know they have to navigate for the rest of their lives. And you can teach them and show them in an operational way that they are not powerless, that they have some voice in the future.
But as mayor, you were powerless to not get the Gearys kicked out of your classroom, weren't you?
But I was going to add to that and say that with the idea of being mayor, then that you can reach for whatever you want to do, but also the responsibility that came with that I didn't know. The mayor was just the starlight, but I didn't realize the responsibility that came with it and the responsibility for others. So that's what you're learning in the classroom. When you have that, now you have a bigger responsibility, and you can't be out there, just doing however you see fit. There's other people here that you have to work with and get along with.
And we talk about social and emotional. If I hear that term one more time, I think I'll die. But social. And she's not one of a kind. I just was a speaker in June, and the little girl next to her sitting down, Donna, was there speaking and saying the same thing. I've kept in touch with some of these kids. The social and emotional part comes when they have a role, when they're playing a role, and they feel responsible for themselves and for others. That's social and emotional.
Frank, there's someone who would like to know if architecture as a truly multidisciplinary medium could have a place in today's classroom. Forget about the social and emotional learning for a moment. Could we have architecture really have a place in today's K-12 schools in terms of teaching and learning about it? I don't think it's on the regular curriculum at the moment.
Well, they can be shown buildings as they grow up, and I don't know how you do it other than art classes, and their art classes usually open the door to what's going on in architecture. You know, some of the buildings stand out in communities, and the kids know about them. So they know that there's something going on, I would guess, but
the more complicated nature of
I think Frank has said to me, you know, he has 150 people in his office sometimes, and he said he goes to Yale and he lectures there, and he speaks in the art department, and he often says that the art students are more interesting than the architecture students because the architecture curriculum can be just exactly what the teachers are facing, this rigid kind of curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I try to tell them architecture is an art, because all the great artists in the past were also architects. Giotto, El Greco, they were architects. It was always the same. And so when I graduated architecture school, I went to the artists. In fact, my first building, the architects of my age group made fun of it.
Why?
I don't know, they thought it was weird. It was just two boxes in plaster. It wasn't, I don't know what was weird about it, but anyway, I think there's this, you know, architecture is an art, and it is expression, and it is relating to the times we're in and to the solving the problems of life. So we don't do it very well, but.
Well, some people, including your sister, would say we don't do teaching very well either. And one of the questions that people are asking is that you're embracing the noise and chaos, both of you, of active learning when you see that film. But they would like you to talk about the importance of these elements in instruction that is really less effective.
Can they show that picture of Frank's office where there's a bunch of models? Because I think that answers the question about how he works and how I hope teachers will let kids work. When Porcha designed the city hall, because she was mayor, her first building was not approved by the building inspector, and she was really very upset. And
remember that, Porcha?
And if you look at Frank's, I don't know where those models are, but if you look, here's a world-class architect who, if you go to his office, he does it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And a friend of mine became a client of Frank's, and he called me one day and said, I don't think your brother likes me because he keeps doing the same building over and over again. And he didn't get what Frank was doing. I don't know where.
Neither did that teacher.
Yes.
So, and yet here we are. You have both kept at it and are doing the things that you love doing and are encouraging others to do the same.
Yeah, it seems that it's not going to just be that easy. You have to work at it.
And never give up.
Well, we're old now, so we need you to light the fire. There are people out there, and they can do it.
There's your call to action, everybody. Light that fire. And Portia, thank you so much for joining us today, even though I was told you weren't going to come up on stage. And a big hand for the Gearys, for Frank Gehry and Frank Gehry Nelson. Doreen Nelson.